Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Always glad to have you with us. Today, we're talking about entrepreneurship in Rhode Island with two women who have started their own businesses. Later on, we're going to hear from Shirley Moore, who is the co-founder and owner of Be More Interpreting. But right now, I'm pleased to be joined by Milena Pagan. You may not know Milena, but you probably know her bagels, Rebelle Artisan Bagels. They are selling like crazy, and you're starting to see them all over the state. Thanks for being here, Milena.
Thank you for having me, Ted.
So, sometimes we have companies on that make complex widgets in their manufacturing operations. Bagels people really understand, but for people who aren't familiar with the company, tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. So we started our shop in 2017. And since then, we've been doing hand-rolled and boiled bagels on the east side of Providence. I taught myself how to make bagels in my home kitchen. I'm not a professional, well, I am now, but I was not a professional baker before. I just felt like this was missing in my neighborhood, and I decided to take it on myself. And since then, we've expanded a lot. We do all sorts of pastries. We popularized Pop-Tarts in the state, not to take credit. We do coffee. We cure our own lox. Everything's made from scratch, fresh, delicious, and it's just been a wild success.
You didn't sell the everything coating for people to put on other stuff. I've seen that at kitchen shops.
Yes, because we have our own everything seasoning mix. So we put it into a little jar and sell it locally as well.
And so we're taping this in March of 2020, and there's actually some news coming because you're getting ready to open another store.
Yes. So I never thought 3 years into this we'd be opening a second shop, but an opportunity came up in my neighborhood as well, and we have a shop coming called Little Sister. So it's going to be on the corner of Hope and Rochambeau on the east side, and we're going to be an all-day cafe and bakery with a little bit of Puerto Rican influence as a nod to my heritage.
I was going to say that's your heritage. So your personal story is fun, and I'm not the first journalist to quiz you about it. As you already said, you were not always planning to be a bagel entrepreneur. You didn't grow up making bagels or anything. You actually have an MIT degree in chemical engineering.
Yes.
So tell us how you got from going from you went from Puerto Rico to MIT, and then you came to here. Tell us about that path and sort of how you came to decide this is what you wanted to do.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I did my high school, my education there. When I was in high school, I was super into cooking, watched the Food Network, all that stuff. And I thought I wanted to go to culinary school. And then I applied to MIT on the encouragement of one of my professors or my teachers. And I got in, and I decided I can't pass this up. It's an opportunity that doesn't really come to many people. So I did my bachelor's in chemical engineering, and then I had a series of office jobs, corporate life, and that wasn't really a good fit for my personality. I'm very much a self-starter. I'm very motivated, very disciplined. So I decided to take a step back, and I left my job. That's actually what brought me to Rhode Island. So then I left my job in Rhode Island, and I sat in my house, and I'm like, what am I going to do next? And I was like, well, I may as well just try this. I'll give myself 6 months, and if it works out, great. And if not, I'll just go look for another job. And within those 6 months, I took all of my training to be a food safety manager. I set up my business, with the state and all that stuff. I did pop-ups, I did my social media, and within 4 months, we had already signed a lease for the shop. So it's just kind of like, you don't know what's happening, you're just sitting in a rocket ship, and it's just taking off, and you just have to go with it.
And why bagels? When did you say, there's donut shops now, there were cupcakes at the time, everything else. When did you say, I feel like bagels is the sweet spot?
Well, I would eat bagels for breakfast every day at the cafeteria at work, and I just didn't really like them. And I had just moved from Brooklyn, so, I had a different standard. And I asked around, and I'm like, am I missing something? Where's the neighborhood bagel shop? And people were like, well, there's this place, that place, but nowhere we really love. And then I was doing retail strategy for my prior job, so I decided to apply those skills to studying the market for bagels locally. And then I was like, there's something here. There's demand, and no one's really doing it in the way that I'm thinking about it. And that way I put together like a little business plan and I shopped it around to people I respected and people seemed very encouraging.
So your corporate background, as much as it's funny to think that path, it actually did help you, or that what you've
100%.
learned going into it being a small business owner.
Absolutely, absolutely. We don't call it like a small business at Rebelle. We really view ourselves as a startup. This is not going to be it for us, just one store and done. But we really apply a lot of the tools and techniques that I learned from working in a Fortune 500 corporation to like the small, startup mentality.
We have to go to break. Before we do, I have to ask you, we often hear restaurants are among the hardest businesses to get off the ground and keep growing. So when we come back, I'm going to ask you for a little insight into that. But first, let's take a break because that's a longer answer. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Milena Pagan, founder and owner of Rebelle Artisan Bagels. Stay with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Later on the show, we're going to talk with Shirley Moore, who owns Be More Interpreting, as well as a new co-working space over in Pawtucket. But right now, pleased to continue the conversation with Milena Pagan. She is founder and owner of Rebelle Artisan Bagels, as well as their second shop, Little Sister, you said, right?
Yes,
Sisters?
Little Sister.
Little Sister, singular, which is opening up soon. So I mentioned before the break, I have to ask you about being in the restaurant, in the food business.
Yeah.
You always hear that is among the toughest industries, period, but particularly to start something new. You've made it work, but I'm curious, do you think that's overblown? Do you think that's true? And what lessons did you learn that helped you get through that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate to say that it's very hard. I haven't tried starting a business in any other industry. There's so many pieces to coordinate. I think that's what makes it a challenging job. For me, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love coming in every day, and it's a little bit different, and there's always some crisis to mitigate, which I'm great at it. But it's, for a lot of restaurants, like the profit margins are tight. There's not a lot of room to make mistakes. You're dealing with large numbers of people, like food safety is very important. So there's just a lot of kind of risks to mitigate throughout the whole business.
We talk a lot, especially in recent years, I think, about the food culture in Providence, particularly, and in Rhode Island more generally, the food industry. Do you think that's helpful if someone's starting a new food business? Is there a culture in place that maybe in some other city it wouldn't take off as much? Is there a culture that helps people want to try new places?
I think people in Rhode Island are very adventurous and open-minded. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see that when I started my business. I think the cost, the barriers to entry here are much lower than in larger cities, but there's a good willingness to pay. People understand high quality, they want to support local, they don't mind paying to have it done right. So I think the ecosystem here is actually very welcoming and supportive of new food businesses.
I always like to ask entrepreneurs this, what was a tough or just a big early lesson you learned, something that was a wake-up call or a moment you said, okay, I've definitely learned something today I'm going to remember?
There's definitely a lot of lessons. I think, if anything, this job has taught me to just remain calm. All you have to do is outlive whatever challenge you're working with at the moment. So you just gotta keep calm and work through it. My husband tells me, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And I always think of that when I'm just one bite at a time, stay calm. And also just stay very focused on what you're doing. Definitely be open to feedback, especially when you are trying to play to your market and you have consumers that you need to please. I think listening is always important. But at the end of the day, you take the feedback, you filter it, and you have that conversation with yourself about what are we actually going to put into place with the business.
And broadening it out, you've definitely emerged as a leader among younger entrepreneurs in Providence, especially young women entrepreneurs, though not solely. I'm curious, you have a lot of conversations because of that with other people starting various kinds of businesses. Are there themes you hear, opportunities, challenges that come up a lot when you talk to your fellow entrepreneur class in the Capitol?
I think hiring is always a challenge for us. We're all very specialized and we do what we do at a very high standard. So hiring is always challenging. I think overall, we all have an interest in like taking care of our employees, building businesses that are sustainable for the community, for our suppliers, for our employees, for our customers. So we're always talking about like how do we up the bar, how do we elevate the game and push ourselves to like be stewards of good business practices, which in a small business setting is like much harder to do than in a large company. We have fewer resources to work with.
And how about advice for state and city leaders? They always want more small businesses starting, medium-sized businesses. They want them to start, they want them to grow, they want them to thrive. What would you advise, the mayor, the governor, other people around them? What would you say would be most helpful to have more entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think starting a business is really hard, mostly because you're flying blind and you don't know what you don't know, and then all of a sudden you get hit with like tons of penalties and I broke this rule that I didn't even know about, that kind of thing. So if there was some kind of concierge to like help guide you through that, I think the Secretary of State has done a great job with the Department of Business Regulations and all that stuff. So anytime I need to go look up like what licenses do I need to open my new business, like it's on there. But I think we could do more of that, especially at a local level in cities. Like every town does it a little bit differently. And then also, like healthcare is very important. Like minimum wage is really important. So if everyone gets put on the same level playing field and all of the businesses have the same requirements to provide for their employees, I think that's going to help the ecosystem.
All right, Milena Pagan, Rebelle Artisan Bagels, thank you so much for joining me. Don't go away though, because when we come back, we're going to talk with Shirley Moore, another entrepreneur, about her interpreting business in Pawtucket and a new co-working space she's opened. Stay with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, joined now by Shirley Moore. She is the owner and co-founder of Be Moore Interpreting. Moore, of course, with two O's like her name. Shirley, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, tell us a little about your business and what you do at Be Moore Interpreting.
Yeah, so Be Moore Interpreting is an interpreting and translation firm, and we focus on helping people really bridge communication. So our goal is to establish people coming newly into communities or just integrating into community, helping them establish, build community, connect with providers, businesses, and just the new world that they're stepping into.
Yeah, in some ways, it's the most basic level of integrating somebody into the community, right? Can they talk and understand and be able to communicate what they need? So I have a possibly dumb question about interpreting, because I'm fascinated by it. It seems really hard to me as someone who has not mastered any second language. How does the process go in your head? Do you listen, translate in your mind, and then say in the other language what it is? Is it just pop right out in the other language? Like, what goes through your mind as you're listening to someone, probably talking quickly in their normal cadence, and trying to get it out into the other language?
So it depends, right? There's different modes or styles of interpretation. So there's consecutive interpretation where you wait a sentence or two and then you say it in another language, right? And then there's simultaneous, which is my favorite. And that's like you're a few words behind the person and you're really trying to emulate everything that they're doing, capture their essence, their content, their context, all in one, which to me is like my favorite.
Sounds really hard.
It is. For some people.
Yeah, that's right. Does it get easier over time as you've been doing it for a number of years?
I think so. I think that as an interpreter, you begin to develop what mode or what style works for you. Like for me, I can do consecutive. You can speak and but I thrive in simultaneous, and so you sort of understand what industries you're really good in and what mode you operate best in, and then it becomes like super easy.
Which languages are you most efficient at to do translation?
Spanish and English, and I speak Brazilian Portuguese and can understand some sign language.
But oh wow, even some sign language. You're all right. So I want to try translating something. I'm not
interpreting.
Excuse me, interpreting.
Translations are written. Interpretations are oral.
See, I'm already learning things.
Yes.
All right. So interpretation. So if I just say it, you'll say it in Spanish?
Si yo lo digo, tú lo dices en español.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and we're talking today with some great local entrepreneurs.
Bienvenida a la sala ejecutiva. Yo soy Ted Nisi. Estamos hablando hoy con unos gran emprendedores.
And I like, and you have my the full the way of doing it there too. That's amazing. So let's talk about it as a business. We know, and I'm glad you corrected me on interpretation between translation. I bet a lot of people at home don't realize the difference either there. So we know the number of Rhode Islanders whose first language is something other than English has been growing in recent years. Our Spanish-speaking population has grown considerably. Has the growth of your business tracked the growth of that population?
Yes. So we launched in 2016. We didn't do any marketing or anything like that. It was all word of mouth and really just tried to figure out how do we iterate this thing? Like how do we do it and make it better and make it better and make it better? And in 3 years, I was able to quit my full-time job and focus on our business. And it's really just opened up doors. We have great customers. We get to do conferences at Brown University or interpret IEPs at Segway Institute for Learning. So there's always a need, and it's proven. The community has proven that not only that we deliver a great service, but that there's a need, and it's continued to grow.
So do you have is it all, you have a co-founder as well, is it all the two of you? Do you have a stable of people doing it with you, or do you expect to go that way?
So it is the two of us managing like the day-to-day operations, but we have a team of about 95 interpreters and translators, and we have over 18 languages at the moment.
Amazing. So as I mentioned, it's not your only business because you've also founded a co-working space in Pawtucket. It's called The Rail. Tell us a little about that and where the idea came from.
So the Rails actually birthed out of Be More Interpreting. So for a long time, Be More Interpreting operated out of different co-working spaces. And I was still working a full-time job, so it just made sense to keep my business there. But when it was time to phase out of my full-time job and really focus on the business, I didn't feel like those co-working spaces were my home. Being an urban entrepreneur, someone who grew up on Manhattan Ave, I wanted a place that captured sort of my essence and who I was. And that really launched the Rail. The Rail, some people think because it's in Pawtucket, it's because of the new subway station. It's not. It's after Harriet Tubman. So all of our memberships are associated with working on the Rail, and really our focus there is on providing or removing barriers to entry for urban and unlikely entrepreneurs.
Unlikely entrepreneurs. What do you mean by that? That's
people
interesting.
That look like me. People that grew up in the projects or in the urban city who do not have a lot of money, who have a lot of obstacles to entry. My business partner, Zoila, and I, we launched Be More Interpreting with $25 a month. And so our goal really is to help people understand that there are barriers, yes, but as a community we can come together, address those barriers, and really launch businesses that really establish a legacy for our children and our children's children and change the way our communities currently operate.
Well, it's interesting too, if you saw that challenge, those barriers, or do you feel there's been a lot of talk in recent years, particularly in the cities, about helping entrepreneurs, reaching out to people, having programs in place at the state level, at the city level, et cetera. Do you find those still aren't as well targeted for people in unlikely entrepreneurs, or have you seen progress on that? I'm curious your perspective. You have thoughts, I can tell.
I believe that there is a lot of effort, and I applaud that effort. I firmly believe that effort requires change, and in order for there to be great change, a lot of these organizations have to change who they are.
How so?
Right?
Spell that out, yeah.
So you have white middle class America developing systems for people who look like me, who have no relation to my struggle, who have no concept of where I've been or what I had to fight through to get to where I'm at. And I think that has to change. If you're gonna develop systems, bring those people in that have overcome, who have a connection to the community, who can share in their struggle to help shape those things. And let's stop putting this one-size-fits-all approach to entrepreneurship. Because if you looked at Zoila and I 3 years ago, you would have never thought that we would have been able to make it.
Let me ask you just that. When did the shift happen in your own mind? You call yourself an unlikely entrepreneur, but at some point you became a likely entrepreneur, right? When did you say to yourself, not only do I see a business model here, but I can run that business? What said that? What gave you that confidence to do that?
So I think, one of my passions is like immigrants. We come here, and in our communities, we have to sell and make in order to survive. So I always made and sold. We did nails growing up at my house, makeup, you name it, we did it. My mom made pasteles, we sold them, you know, like I always kind of had that vibe.
It's in your roots,
I had that
being
vibe,
entrepreneurial.
exactly. Yeah. But I had worked for 20 years in human services. It was all that I knew. So that sort of shifts your mindset, right? You're focused on giving people things. I took an entrepreneurship course called Bootstrap Bootcamp, and the first question that the professor asked was, what's one thing that you do right now that you can monetize, that will generate money tomorrow? And my dream was like, I'm gonna buy houses and I'm gonna flip them. That was my goal, right? And he was like, that's a really big dream. What can you do now? And I was like, interpreting. Like, I do it. I already had some contracts. I was already working for different companies. I knew the business. I didn't know what a business model was, but I knew the business. I knew how to make money at it. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna launch an interpreting firm.
And it just worked.
And it just worked.
So it was partly just having someone say to you, what can you do? Just having you in your own mind, just think, oh wait, I have this skill and I can monetize that, and then it takes off from there.
That's it. I do that with people all the time.
So you're a businesswoman in Pawtucket. Pawtucket has had, as you know, a lot of hard blows in recent years. The hospital closing, the Pawsox are leaving, but there's also been some more optimistic news lately. The soccer stadium redevelopment effort, the new commuter rail station you mentioned earlier they're working on. How are you feeling about Pawtucket's prospects today in 2020 as a business person there?
I have to be completely honest. I'm like,
oh, nice.
Let's go. Why? Because I think that, first of all, in our camp, we call it gentrification, right? And so the process is gentrifying our city, and I think that there's an obvious opportunity for us to say to Black and brown folks, hey, let's capitalize on this gentrification. Let's not allow it to drive us out of our community. Let's not allow it to take our community from us.
Because you don't often hear that said in a positive way, like you're looking at potential positive for gentrification, it sounds like.
Yes, I don't think that it's completely positive, but I think there's an opportunity that when done correctly, our community can really capitalize from. My husband and I, we travel a lot, and we went to Roatan, Honduras, and one thing that we noticed, we got off the cruise and there were like all these entrepreneurs that were there, and they were building together. So one guy pulled us and told us to get on this bus, but he had no relation to the bus. He just like gathered people for the bus, and the bus driver had no relation to the tour guide, but this other guy brought her in, and the port was coming, right? They were there, they built it, but they all said, you know what, we can make money, we can feed off of that. And they worked together to feed each other every day.
What do you think needs to happen for that to be the reality in Pawtucket as the city clearly gets reshaped in the next few years?
We start talking about it now. You know, that's why Be More Interpreting is in downtown Pawtucket. That's why the rail is in downtown Pawtucket. My husband, Leslie Moore, and I launched the rail because we said, you know what? People are gonna need a low entry place, right? $30 a month to have a spot at the rail. That's not a lot of money for our community. And so if you create the opportunity, people can jump on and off the train right there. They can begin to develop these businesses. And as things rise here, we rise with it, rather than it rises and now we have to go because we can't afford it.
All right, some optimism and some good advice from Shirley Moore from Be More Interpreting. And remember, interpreting is not translation. We have learned that today. Thank you, Shirley, for being with me.
Ted.
And thank you for joining us on this week's Executive Suite. Remember, you can catch every episode of the show on WPRI.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. We'll see you back here next week on Executive Suite.